Joining us also now to react to the president's Oval Office address to the country tonight, South Carolina Senator Graham. Senator Graham, you've been around Congress a bit of time, and both in 2006, you were around when the Secure Fence Act was passed to build 700 miles of wall, which never happened. In 2013, they allocated $46 billion for border security, $8 billion to build and repair and reinforce barriers at the border. And I'm listening to Senator Schumer and Congresswoman Pelosi say this is a manufactured crisis. Would you say that to Police Officer Singh's family tonight, or Pierce Corcoran's mom and dad that were on this program last night, or the families of victims of 4,000 homicide families? Would you say this is manufactured?
It couldn't be more real to them. This is the most presidential I've seen President Trump. It was compelling, and everything he said was true. About 30% of the 2,200 miles of border has some form of barrier. There are already walls along the border. We just need to extend those walls where it makes sense. The one thing we have in common as a member of the Senate, Speaker of the House, Minority Leader of the Senate, and President of the United States, we have a bunch of people guarding us with guns. It's pretty hard to get in the Capitol, really hard to get in the White House. All the president's saying is, I'd like to provide more security to the American people. It is a crisis, Sean. I've tried to be reasonable and practical when it comes to immigration, and I'm flabbergasted to hear from my Democratic colleagues who have voted for billions of dollars in border security money that this is manufactured. Was it manufactured when Obama wanted the money? No. Why didn't you give the money to Obama and Bush if it was a manufactured crisis?
Well, and I think if you look, Hillary Clinton supported it, Chuck Schumer supported it, Biden supported it, Obama supported it. We have had in the last 2 weeks really high-profile incidences. One is Officer Singh, and the other is this young man. His parents were on the show last night. Pierce Corcoran died, illegal immigrant, killed him in a drunk driving accident. And the question here is, when you add to that the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, and you add to that the violence at the border, and let's assume 98% of people across the border, which I believe are people that want more freedom and opportunity. But we got to ask ourselves, how many lives, if we lose 4,000 lives in a 2-year period, is that a manufactured crisis?
To my Democratic friends, how many caravans have to rush the border until you believe we have a problem? We have 300,000 people waiting for asylum claims to be adjudicated. We have 11,000 unaccompanied minors from Central America. It costs us $750 a day to house them. Only God knows what they go through to get here. Illegal immigration is on the rise because our policies are attracting people here. Every Democrat you heard from tonight has voted for border security, but when it comes to Trump, they say no. So Nancy Pelosi says end the shutdown. Donald Trump says secure the border. How about this? Let's secure the border, then end the shutdown.
Let me ask you, Senator, it seems to come down to their argument is, and I know it is inconvenient for those furloughed employees. I acknowledge and I can sympathize with them. I know their checks are going to be delayed in some cases, but it's a partial government shutdown. Essential services are up and running, and that constitutes what 2/3 to 70% of the government stays open. And I do want these people that have been furloughed to get back money, et cetera. But the point is, if the president doesn't take the stand here fully, do you see any other path that he can use that he will get the money to stop the crimes from happening on our southern border, the drug trafficking, human trafficking, some criminal elements that want to cross over our border?
I've been dealing with this since 2006. This is the best chance I've seen to get a deal. The president made a compelling case tonight for more border security, and I think he is right to ask for more money to secure our border. As to the government employees, I'm sorry you're in the middle of this mess, but you'll get your back pay. You're going to be fully compensated. Miss Singh is not going to get her husband back. To all those people who have lost loved ones from illegal immigration, your loved ones are not coming back. So I'm bound and determined to see this thing through. There should be a deal where we secure the border, give the president the wall money he needs, and try to fix other problems like TPS reform and maybe do something for the DACA population. There's a deal to be had here, but it's hard to get a deal when people you're dealing with call you a racist because you want a border security wall, give you $1 and say that's enough, accuse Border Patrol agents of gassing children when mobs run toward our border. We're dealing with pretty radical people here, and we're never going to get a deal until the radicals are set to the side and we get reasonable people to deal with.
You know, especially considering that it was supported by Democrats in the past, you're making a good point here. If people want to, as we know, abolish ICE, Kamala Harris actually said to the former head of ICE, Tom Homan, suggested that, well, you know, there's a perception that ICE is, at least in people's minds, perceived as the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
I was pretty stunned that we would talk about brave law enforcement that way. But we also watched these officers get pelted with rocks and bottles on 2 occasions, during the migrant caravan and on New Year's Eve. The bottom line is this. This is the question I think we need to ask tonight. Will the wall work? In Yuma, Arizona, the sheriff said it works. It works every time it's been tried.
Well, it works in Israel. I can tell you, I've been dealing with border security issues for 10 years plus. Every time we build a physical barrier, the drug trafficking goes down, the illegal crossings go down. There's some places you don't need a physical barrier, but there's 700 miles of fencing has been authorized since 2006. We just want to build what we've already agreed to do. And so the bottom line is walls work, but you're dealing with a group of people who see their government as the problem. They see the Border Patrol agent as the problem, not the mob. They see the ICE agent as the problem, not the illegal immigrant they're trying to go after. They see walls that already exist as immoral. You know what I think is immoral? Is to accuse people of trying to defend the nation honestly and working hard and putting their lives at risk of being the problem and not the coyote, not the drug dealer, not the terrorist. So if Democrats want to fight, they're going to get one. If they want to solve the problem, we'll do that too.
It seems and I want to know where your fellow Republican senators stand here, because if the argument of the Democrats is this is a manufactured crisis, well, that goes against the number of homicides in that 2-year period and sex offenses that have taken place in that 2-year period and violent acts against Americans in that 2-year period, then the drug and the human trafficking. The question is here, we're talking about, on the one hand, we're going to have some people that work for our government that are inconvenienced. I am sympathetic to that.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, me too.
But I'm also sympathetic to the parents that were on this program last night. I'm sympathetic to the 5-month-old little boy of a police officer in California that will never see his father for the rest of his life. And I'm sympathetic to the victims of crime. Are your fellow Republicans willing to say life and death is more important than a delayed paycheck and inconvenience?
I hope Republicans will remember, like most Democrats, you voted for $25 billion for border security funding in February of 2018. If it's a manufactured crisis, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, why did you vote for a border security package less than a year ago that had $25 billion for border security, including wall money? To my Republican colleagues, this is the best chance we'll ever have to help President Trump get border wall funding, steel barrier funding, and at the same time fix the loopholes. The only way we lose is to give in. If we'll stand firm, put deals on the table that make sense, we will win this on behalf of the American people. But if we undercut the president, that's the end of his presidency and the end of our party, and we deserve to be punished if we give in now.
In other words, as long as it takes, you believe you and your fellow senators are willing to stay and fight to stop drugs, human trafficking, and criminal activity from the small percentage of people that cross our border because it's unsafe and not secured.
Before the end of this week, I intend to put legislation together that has wall funding like the president has requested and argue that we voted for the same thing in the past before he was president. I intend to put legal reforms on the table that we've all voted for. I intend to help the TPS population. About 400,000 people are going to lose their legal status. And I'm willing to entertain legal status for the DREAM Act population that we've all voted for. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take bills we've all voted for and see if they can be voted for under Trump. The problem is not the policy. The problem is that my Democratic friends don't acknowledge that President Trump won. That's the problem.
All right, Senator Graham, thank you for being with us tonight.
Senator, good evening. Great to have you with us this evening. You know, when you look at the question of amnesty, this is a very hot issue for your party, and at times it can make it very difficult to run on. You've run into issues of your own with the question of amnesty and your own definition of what you'd like to see in immigration. I just want to play something for you back from 2015, and then we'll jump in here.
He was always in favor of amnesty. He was in favor of people pouring into the country. Then what happened is when people found that out, he sank like a rock in the water.
It's always used as a political cudgel, and that was back during the early stages of the campaign. But the president may be in a situation where he needs to negotiate on the Dreamers. What do you say now about all this?
Well, first of all, the president's already offered amnesty to Dreamers. He's actually offered to not just take in the people that applied for DACA, but the people who were eligible and didn't. So frankly, he's gone above and beyond what others have offered in the past, and even that was not enough for the Democrats in that negotiation. Here's the bottom line. We support legal immigration. You can have a debate and people can argue about what the right number should be, but right now, every year, 1 million people, over 1 million people every year come to the United States legally. Okay. Number two, so you can support a system of legal immigration, but that means that you also have to have a system that identifies people before they come in, that allows you to vet who they are, that allows you to control the numbers, and allows people to enter in an orderly process. We do that with everything else in life. You can't just show up at a concert without a ticket. You can't just get on an airplane without going through TSA. And you can't just go into any country in the world because you decide just to walk in. There has to be a process. Now, when we talk about a wall isn't just about keeping people out. A wall is to funnel traffic so that someone who's crossing the border has to cross at a point of entry where they can be monitored, where you can check who they are and you can check what they're bringing. And I would add one more point in all this. This is not just about immigration. This is about the humanitarian crisis that a porous border presents for the country. When people believe that they're going to be able to get across that border, they go on that journey. It's a dangerous journey. They bring children with them, young families. People are dying on the way here. The only people winning here are the traffickers. It's bad for Mexico. It's bad for America. It's bad for these migrants. And a wall is part of the solution. It's not the only thing we have to do, but it's a part of it. By the way, one last point. I apologize. The $5 billion isn't just for a wall. It is to fund the top 10 priorities in the border security plan. That does include a wall. It includes other things as well. And many of the people opposed to that voted for $20 billion of funding for border security in 2013 in that bill that was so controversial that I was a part of.
As you rightly point out, the president did offer 800,000 DACA recipients, also known as Dreamers, to be able to stay in the country. That deal appears to be off the table, at least at the moment. And what we're hearing now from the White House is that he's more dug in on this than ever. Take a look at one of the quotes from a couple of his supporters who want nothing to do with any kind of Dreamer exchange. This one from the ALI PAC president: any support of DACA amnesty before or after construction of the border wall is a betrayal to his campaign promises. This from Chris Kobach: any amnesty, whether it's DACA or some other amnesty, will have incredibly negative consequences for the country. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I don't believe that should be negotiated as part of this. This is, look, no matter what someone believes about whether we should give amnesty to people that have been here a long time or not, whether you should deport everybody, the one thing we should all agree on is that every country in the world has a system by which they monitor, control who comes in, when they come in, and how they come in, and the United States should be no different. Every other nation on earth does that. Mexico does it, Guatemala does it, Canada does it, and America should do it. And we have a problem on the southern border of not just people being trafficked, but drugs. Almost all this heroin that's finding itself in the street, the fentanyl that's being shipped in from China, a lot of that is coming across that border. So even if we didn't have an immigration problem, you have a rationale for limiting how people can come in and what can come into that border.
Understood. But, you know, the argument has become by some on the other side of the aisle from you that any form of wall, any barrier, that it has a racist connotation, that we're being immoral if you want to protect the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is getting a lot of attention since she started her new job. Today she said this: the president defended neo-Nazis who murdered a woman in Charlottesville. The Department of Justice sued him for not renting to black tenants. He launched his campaign by calling Mexicans rapists. He banned Muslims. The president is racist, and that should make you uncomfortable. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, all that kind of outrageous talk has become par for the course in today's politics. It makes you famous and it gets you noticed. I'm here to make a difference and to pass laws and to do serious stuff. And the bottom line is that no matter who the President of the United States is, whether you like them or not, one of the fundamental obligations of the federal government is to enforce our immigration laws. In essence, what they are, people that oppose this are basically saying, yes, we want to have immigration laws, but we don't want you to enforce them. And I think that's the question, is what are you in favor of? What enforcement measures are you in favor of? Because the biggest threat to legal immigration is illegal immigration. It has turned immigration, which is something that we are a nation of immigrants, into a controversial topic, because we still welcome 1.2 million people every single year into this country legally, but they're saying anyone who comes here should be able to stay here, or we should just look the other way. I know they give lip service to border security and enforce the law, but they know in practical terms what they are advocating is that anyone who comes here gets to stay here. How's that good for anyone? It's certainly not good for us, and it's lending itself to this trafficking network that's trafficking in human beings. But again, beyond immigration, drugs are crossing that border every day, and guns are going back the other way into Mexico. That's why there's got to be more control there.
We're going to get into more of this with Geraldo and Juan Williams in just a second. Before I let you go, very quickly, you had a bill that did not pass today. I know you feel very strongly about it. Senate Bill number 1, which had to do with Middle East security. And it also had to do with something that you see as an anti-Israeli sentiment on the Democrat side in the Senate.
Yeah, well, look, there's a movement out there called BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, and it pressures companies to do no business in Israel, boycott Israel, divest of any investments in Israel. We have a law, bipartisan law, by the way, that says that a city or a state has the right to not have any contracts or do any business or contract for services or goods with companies that are boycotting Israel. That's what the bill does. It doesn't force them to do it. It just gives them the right to do it. And all of a sudden we have people out there on the Democratic side that don't want to vote for it. They all claim to be against BDS, but if you are shielding companies that participate in BDS from any sort of counter boycott against them for doing that, they have a right to do it. People have a right to not do business with them. If you're shielding them, you're supporting BDS.
You're going to take it up again. Senator Rubio, thank you very much. Great to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.